Hi, I'm Dr. Lucas, and welcome to Abstract Essay. And of course, my partner in painting, Mr.
I,
Sal Cosenza.
I like that. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Daniel Lucas, how are you?
I'm fabulous, fabulous like you, Mr. Sal. And what are your New Year's resolutions for
My,
2025, year of the
to,
snake?
that's true. To survive, that's one. And to just manage time management, right? To stay creative, stay inspired by things. Um, I teach also, so that's going to keep me super busy. So I need
Yes,
to keep my memory going,
yes,
I take a
motivate,
pill for it. It's for memory, and I forget what else.
stay motivated.
That was a bad joke. These poor listeners. No.
Yes, yes. I'm so grateful that I have a new co-host on Abstract Essay because if I don't have a co-host doing every single episode, I'm so have this lazy mode.
Yeah, I hear you. I know it's a lot of material you gotta cover, and man, you do how many podcasts do you host?
I think I
At
have
least,
8 so far right
oh my
now.
goodness, that's not
Yes.
enough, Daniel.
It's not enough yet. No, we are introducing a new podcast called Mental Health 101. So here we
Nice.
go. We
Yeah.
are empowering mental health to help those people suffering from mental health with my new partner, Mr. G. Mix Smith. So tune in
Nice.
for that this coming February. Mental Health 101.
Yep. Very important. Everyone should address their mental health. I'm a big advocate of that as well.
Yes.
That's why
So,
I do art. That's why
yes,
I'm sure you
yes,
do it, right? It's a
yes.
therapy. It's a form of therapy.
Yes, doing artisanal therapy. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Sal, what will be our topic for today?
So, in the spirit of the new year, this is the time of year, and actually today, and I hate saying it, but today is actually my birthday. So I'm,
Happy
thank you.
birthday to you. Drum roll, please.
and
Ah,
and many more on Channel 4
yes, many
and
more.
Scooby Doo on Channel 2. Yes.
That'd be
So
awesome.
so
From
I'm
the bottom of
37.
yes, I'm from the bottom of my heart, partner. I wish you all the best for 2025 and more paintings, more episodes to come
I
on.
appreciate that. And back at you, Daniel. Good health for you, good health for everyone
Yes,
listening and watching.
as likewise, good health for
So,
everybody.
yeah, so exactly. So, in the spirit of the times, I was looking back at some of my art and thinking which paintings would be appropriate for a change in seasons, right? With every new year, I think all of us we reset, we recalibrate. I was telling you recently that last year I wrote down my first New Year's resolutions. I
Illusion.
created a list, and it did not go well, right? I had I had 11 topics on the list. Six of them were achieved. Um, it depends if you're a glass half full person. It's a success. If you're not, then a lot of work is to be done. But six were achieved. Two of them were canceled, and three of them I'm looking were in progress. So I'm not going to make any more. I think the answer is just to make art, make stuff, right? Don't make lists. Um, well, I don't know if that's the answer, but it's one answer. But anyway, let me go ahead and share screen. May I, Daniel?
Yes, you may. Ready
Okay,
for
I'm
you.
gonna go here, hit share. All right, can you see the
Wow.
three paintings up here?
Awesome. Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
And for those just listening in, if you can't see these, um, here's a plug, but you could always check out my website, salcosenza.com. You could find these paintings and many more. But the work that I chose to talk about today is from a trilogy, another trilogy I created called House Trilogy. And this was during these three panels, three, I should say, really canvases, um, were created during the pandemic. I was really busy, I think, as we all were during the pandemic, doing stuff inside, right? Creating a lot of indoor projects for myself. And so these three paintings are three such examples. And the idea with these was to create a sort of stationary camera shot, right? So the same exact angle um, for each painting, but three different time periods, three different seasons, right? And so I remember watching this movie with Kevin Costner
Mm,
and
yes.
Diane Lane. It was called Let Him Go, I think was the name of it. And it was about this sort of farmer community. And I think um, they're trying to find their son who was kidnapped, I think, from what I remember. But at the end of the movie, they had this very iconic shot of a burning farmhouse. And I was just
Yes.
thinking about, you know, where we were at that point in time in 2021 with the raging pandemic. I was just thinking of really, for me, the farmhouse represents like Americana, right? So I was thinking that's kind of where we're at right now. And you know, I could argue that that's kind of how I feel we are right now too. So I'm very jaded and you know, I'm an artist, you know, we're allowed to be a
Yes.
little jaded, right? But
Yes.
so
Definitely.
this idea of this burning farmhouse really spoke to me. So I turned it into a three-part series, sort of documenting the farmhouse. So the first panel, and each one is named, right? So you have House One on the left. House One is subtitled Anguish. House Two,
English.
yeah, here's just a close up. I'm panning down on some more images. Here's house one. You could see it's clearly ablaze, right? It's
Oh,
this sort of
fire.
surreal, it's like a surreal type of farmhouse though. It's still anthropomorphic because I love, you know, living inanimate objects, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's sort of sitting on these legs. It looks as if it's like a creature of some sort, but it's on fire. The sky around it is sort of supporting this notion of what's going on with it, and the earth below is all dried out, right? And then, so this was the first sort of opening chapter in the trilogy. You know, we don't really know how and why it's on fire, it just is on fire. Um,
Yes.
so then the second panel is called Hope, right? So it's called Hope because the fire is out. Um, you know, unfortunately, the house is destroyed. The earth below is also basically scorched and dried out. But the sky is sort of indicating, you know, potentially some hopefulness to come. And again, you know, I'm taking myself back to that time of 2021. You know, the pandemic was there, but there was this hope that things would get better, that this pandemic would eventually end. Um, you know, I'm pro-vaccine, so I felt that the vaccine was going to help in that regard, right? It was going to help get us back on track. So even though there is destruction, there are signs that there are hope, that there is hope. And then so to reinforce that, I painted this seedling on the bottom left of the canvas, right? This is the first sign of life in this otherwise scorched, dead environment, this dead landscape. So it's sort of a promising sign that, you know, there will be life at some point going forward. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and so um, you know, the terminating chapter, or I should say the culminating chapter, it's a little more optimistic, is here it is again, the house. You know, let's fast forward maybe, you know, a couple years after, and that little seedling is now a full-fledged plant. And then all around it, the terrain is covered in foliage and flowers, and the house itself, the skeletal remains of the, you know, cindered house are now covered in in blossoms and foliage, right? And the sky around it is very optimistic, right? And so I was sort of going through some of my archive videos, and I found this one. I'm going to switch. Can you see the tab change?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on Instagram now. So I was really time-lapse crazy. So here's one such. And just for our listeners, I'll narrate. It's a very sped up image of house one, the burning farmhouse being painted. And I learned a lot kind of doing this. And plus I just think they're just damn fun to to watch these time lapses. So as I was going along in the process, I was documenting each one, each painting. So here's one showing the first house, and then if I click the tab, here's my YouTube. Here's the one of house number 3, the revival it's called, showing the plants sort of growing on top of that, on top of the skeletal remains, right? So it was a very sort of enriching experience to create these paintings. I think I learned a lot about there's a discipline that I had to employ as I painted these, because each of them had to follow sort of the same horizon line, right? There were a lot of consistencies that had to be kept from the first house to the second to the third. So I remember using trace paper, for example, to sort of faithfully replicate the remains on the third panel, so that they looked like the remains that were found on the second panel, right? Even though the third panel, eventually most of the remains that I copied over were covered in plants, but I still wanted it to be as close as consistent as possible, right? And that also goes with the angle of the stairs and the angle of the pathway leading up to the stair, right? So there was a great uniformity to these that I think are among my most consistent. I think that these 3 paintings are some of my most consistent paintings that I've ever done. So they were quite a challenge to create for me. Um, I always try to push myself, as I'm sure you do, Daniel, and I'm sure many listening and watching do, right? As artists,
Yes.
we must constantly push the envelope in our own work, right? Keep challenging yourself, because the second you don't, it doesn't, for me anyway, the second I don't challenge myself, not only is it not exciting, but I find that I'm not growing. I'm not growing as a creative person. Um, so I think that, you know, creating stuff like this, 3 panels that have to be consistent, but each one has to tell a story, is a challenge that I accepted at the time, and I'm looking for new opportunities like this going forward, right? And again, I think that this is an example for all of us too. It's as a creative person, whether you create music, whether you write poetry, whether you create paintings, whatever it may be, you're sort of documenting where you are at that point in time, right? So document away. Um, Anticipate also. These 3 paintings were documenting the present and the past, but also speculating on the future in their own sort of visual way, right? So I still sort of think back um, think about these paintings in a fond way. I don't think back at the time that we were in very fondly at all, but I'm glad that at least I was able to produce something out of that time. you know,
Yes.
um,
So, Mr. Sal,
yes.
thank you so much for producing this. That's a lovely painting. So
Thank
you
you.
type
Thanks for allowing me to share it.
yes. So you titled them Anguish, Hope, and Revival.
Yes.
Yes. So
Anguish, hope, and revival.
How did you create a depth or a perspective in each painting of
Yeah,
this
so
trilogy?
the perspective had that was the challenge of these is it had to be identical, as close as I could, as close to identical as I can make it, because I really wanted the viewer to really feel like they were part of a time, I guess a time machine where they were able to view three different eras of this same site, this house,
Yes,
without moving. Because I think if I had shifted the camera angle, it would have taken on a different meaning that I wasn't going for. I almost wanted it to be like I guess a nature documentary where you're studying, the subject, which is why, again, where I placed that camera was important.
yes,
But also, I was adamant about not putting the house in the dead center of each canvas. I try to avoid centrally located objects in my paintings. I think it's sort of more natural to put it off to a side, right? There's a photographic trick for anyone who does photography. I'm preaching to the choir, or cinematography as well. But there's the classic the grid. I think it's a six-part grid where the focal point is never in the center. It's usually on one of the side um, uh, points, right, where the grids meet. But it's never dead center. So
yes.
I try to employ that.
And what techniques did you use in shading and blending this trilogy of yours?
In blending it, you mean
Yes.
like in blending the three of them together?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of tape. I'm not afraid to use. I'm not afraid to not use tape, I should say. Um, and that helps me create those consistent points, like with the horizon, for example. The horizon um, had to be consistent again among each painting. And of course, the painterly style that I was obeying on each canvas had to match. And that's something that I think came through with the final result.
Yes. People, please do visit Mr. Sal Cosenza website. There's a lot of paintings out in this website that you can say, "Oh wow, amazing!"
Yes,
And
it's
we,
chock full.
yes,
Well,
Chuck.
so a word on the website. I recommend everybody invests in a website because it really is sort of like a living portfolio. I'm
Yes,
always I'm always encouraging my students to generate a website because you could also change it over time. You could add to it, whereas a stationary portfolio, it's sort of stuck in time, right? Like you print it or you make it as a PDF and it's done. But with a website, it keeps going. And what's nice is you could you could reflect on your story. You could sort of look back at some work you've done and either build on it or at least consider it. Right. So I recommend everybody listening and watching gets a website this year. That's a
yes,
New Year's resolution I'm advocating.
yes, definitely. And if you have a website, you for sure you will be proud of yourself because this will be your legacy. So, Mr. Sal, if you want to modify the Anguish, Hope, and Revival trilogy, which part of this trilogy would you like to modify? If you want to modify,
Hmm. In terms of like story,
yes, or
yeah.
in any angle.
Well, I think the story again, and this kind of touches on what we talked about a couple weeks ago. I wish we did not have war, right? And in this case, I wish we did not have that horrible pandemic. But we did, right? And we do have war. And so, you know, the inspiration that the source material is problematic, right? The fact that I needed to reference something that is destructive to get this series going, I think is problematic. But again, it's the artist, it's any sort of creative person, it's their job to sort of document or chronicle events in their own way, right? So I don't know if I regret it, but I just think that it's unfortunate that it has to be this way. I did stumble upon this quote. It was posted on Instagram by Robert Kaplan, but I
Yes,
think it was reposted. So, but I think if anybody Googles this, they'll find the original author. But it's a really profound quote for what we're talking about. And here's the quote: artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. Right? So I'm going to read that again because I think it's important. Artists
yes,
need artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. Right? And I think that,
it's so meaningful.
reading that, yeah, especially again with the start of this new year, if you're a creative person thinking like, what am I going to do? I want to be creative. I want to make paintings. I want to make art. I want to make something. um, Quotes like this really help booster inspiration. They really help embolden ideas, right? And again, like this painting series and like this quote, it's rooted in some sort of sadness, usually, right? But the artist's role, the creative role, is to produce something, if not optimistic, but productive. Make something productive out of something that's horrible, right? So I think that this
Totally agree.
series does it. Yeah.
Totally agree, Mr. Saul. And for this trilogy of yours, how did you decide when these paintings are finished? Okay, this is finished already, and I need to put on the website.
Yes. I think, well, for this one, it was really easy to be done, believe it or not, because I had mapped out the whole story, the elements that were there. It's this one is among my, I think, one of the easier ones for me to conclude, right? There were others that we talked about a couple episodes back that were much harder to figure out when to stop. But this one, once I had all the elements in place, the house skeleton covered in bushes and trees, and then the plant that sort of was fully grown or on its way to becoming fully grown. Once those elements were there, then I really didn't need to add anything more. I remember I was gonna add birds and wildlife to the third one, but I really didn't need to. I think that the point was made.
Yes, the point is made already, and the trilogy is perfect.
The trilogy
And
is complete. Yes.
yes, and complete. Anguish, hope, and revival. It's totally complete. The message is there, and through looking at it, you can say that it's explicit, something else. And Mr. Sal, thank you so much for
Thank,
sharing your talents to the world.
thank you. Thank
Thank
you, Daniel.
yes,
Thanks for all
and
you do.
yes, that's what we are doing on Abstract Essay as well as my Book 101 review. Please do listen to my feature author of the month of this, no, no, January, people. January. Award winning and best selling author. Of course, we did already our first episode. Please do tune in and listen to that and check who is my best selling and award-winning author for January. So, Mr. Sal, can you promote your something else to promote? Your book,
Um,
Manhattan.
Yeah, my book it's still out there, and I'm actually, for the first time ever, I'm offering signed copies for anyone who
Yes,
cares to own them. You could get those directly on my website under it's salcosenza.com/shop. So I'm pretty excited about that. But thank you
yes.
again, Daniel, and Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year to everyone. Let's support Mr. Sal Cosenza for the book Manhattan Rising. So that if you support him, more books to come like that to come. So, Mr.
Cheers.
Sal, invite our listeners to visit your amazing website.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. It's salcosenza.com, and you'll
Yes,
find all the craziness and all the madness. It's all in that website.
yes.
You'll look through this website going, this person's kind of nuts, isn't he? No.
We said this guy is talented for
Well,
sure.
I say that too. No, just kidding.
Multi-talented. And people, please visit also my official website of our Food 101, www.food101.ca, if you want to look at certain recipe that you want to cook, taste, or share to other people. www.food101.ca, official website of Food 101.
And
So,
that's great for the new year, right? To
yes.
start off right diet-wise, right?
Diet lies,
Pick the
yes.
right
Mm.
foods.
Pick the right nutritious food good for your body.
Yes.
So please do listen, people, Food 101 on our fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Again, Food 101. So, Mr. Sal, catch you next week.
Catch you next week. Thank you. Have a great week.
More to come, people. See you soon.